Good morning, everyone. Again, as Kelly mentioned, I'm Heather Edwards. I'm the Marketing and Training Director for Department of Advantage Staffing. And we're very excited to be participating in WMPA's APTConnect this week. And we really appreciate the opportunity to sponsor today's session on communication. Why use 3 words when emoji will do? So we do encourage you to visit our virtual booth in the supplier marketplace and to find out more about the staffing services we provide. We can assist you with temporary staffing, temporary to permanent staffing, permanent placement hiring as well. While you're at our virtual booth, we also want you to check out the information we put in there that talks about our Ready, Set, Hired and our Quick Start permanent placement programs. They're both great opportunities if you have open positions. And after all, we are ready to help and here to assist with all of those staffing needs. But before you do leave our virtual booth, do make sure you submit a contact form to be entered into our daily price drawings. We are giving away a $25 Amazon gift card at the end of today and another $25 Nordstrom gift card at the end of the day tomorrow. Overall, our grand prize drawing will be a $100 Nordstrom gift card, and we are going to be doing that next week during WMPA Wednesday's live Facebook event. So make sure you tune in for that. But now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Laurel Zacher, Vice President, Marketing and Talent Development for Security Properties Residential.
Oh, thank you, Heather. Well, I am thrilled to be with you guys today, and I'm thrilled to see that I know so many people that are out there right now. So it feels like I'm just having a chat with my friends. So I love that. What a great way to spend a morning. So as Heather said, I'm Laurel Zacher. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Talent Development at Security Properties Residential. I have been in this industry since I was a wee baby. I would like to say I started when I was 12, so you can't figure out how old I am. But I was a little older than that. So today we're talking about communication, and in today's fast-paced environment and ways that we can become more powerful communicators. So this session addresses our professional lives, but keep in mind these ideas work in our personal lives too. Before we get started though, I want to start with a brief poll to break the ice. And since Halloween is coming, what's better than talking about Halloween candy, right? Let me get this advanced for us. Great. So you see the poll up on your screen right now. Every year, candystore.com ranks the 10 worst Halloween candies, and 2019 winners are up on your screen. So for the purposes today, we're just going to look at the top 5, and those are candy corn, circus peanuts, peanut butter kisses, wax cola bottles, and Necco wafers. I have one of those that I definitely hate. Let me put a plug in for candy corn, by the way. If you put it in a bowl with some mixed nuts, it's delicious. It tastes like a payday candy bar. So go ahead and enter, choose, and then vote. And then Kelly, you can go ahead and close out that poll. Let's see what we've got for choices on there. Oh, I'm losing my candy corn. I hate circus peanuts too, but Necco wafers are the ones that I think are just the devil's playground. I can't stand those. So I wanted everyone to have a chance to get your poll digits working, but let's go ahead and get started talking about communication. There you go. So if you've ever seen the movie Glengarry Glen Ross, then you recognize this scene right away. It has the famous line, "Coffee's for closers." I love that movie. And what you're seeing is Alec Baldwin explaining some of his theories for sales success. One of them that I've absorbed and that actually I use all the time is ABC, always be closing. It's stuck with me throughout my career. You see, when I started in property management, I was in leasing. I was selling the dream of a better future and a new apartment at our community on my tours. More money in their pocket, more free time, more space, whatever was relevant to them, that's what I honed in on. Then I moved to the supplier side of our industry, and I was selling advertising in the literal sense, but I was also selling our ability to solve that community's problems like low traffic or overspent budgets or apartments sitting empty. When I moved back to the corporate world, I was selling others within the organization on my ideas to help the company grow and be respected. With my team, I'm still selling. I'm selling them on choosing to follow me and trust in my vision for their future as well as mine. So my first question to you is this: what are you selling, and do you know? Now, some of you are likely sitting there thinking, I don't sell anything and I don't know what she's talking about, and what a waste of time. If that word feels strange, if it feels inauthentic or uncomfortable for you, then you can swap it out for another word. How about a word like persuade or influence? Who are you influencing today? What are you trying to persuade someone to do? Use whichever word fits for you today when we're talking and you hear me use the word selling. But no matter how you phrase it and no matter what it is that you're selling, communication is the way you make it happen. It doesn't matter if you're in maintenance, leasing, a corporate role, a property manager, or a supplier partner. The ability to effectively communicate is a critical skill for all of us. Despite all the changes we're going through right now, one constant has remained the same. The ability to influence, engage, inspire, relate, and build rapport is the key to professional success. Communication is how we do that. So why does clear and effective communication matter? Well, it creates a positive culture. At the heart of a great work culture is communication. When the teams are clear about what's expected of them, it boosts productivity and job satisfaction, and that results in a positive work culture. It facilitates personal and organizational growth. Growth of an organization is fueled by effective communication, but so is your personal growth. When employees have a clear idea of the organization's visions and goals, then the growth and innovation of the company are inevitable. When you are clear with yourself on what's important to you and your goals for your future you've taken, the first step in making these goals a reality. It builds an effective team. The productivity of a team is based on how they act, react, and behave with each other. Communicating openly, clearly, and with empathy will help in building rapport with a team and boost their spirit towards productivity. It generates trust. It establishes transparency, and transparency generates trust among employees. Trust creates an environment where people are honest and accountable. In such a company, management trusts employees with bigger responsibility and opportunity. And employees trust that the company has their best interests at heart, overall creating an environment that fosters growth. And then finally, it's about relationships between the company and the resident, or the company and your client. You're on the supplier side. A smooth and trustworthy relationship between you, your company, and your residents is built over clear communication. Do they know what to expect? And do you follow through on your word every time? Residents value a management company and their team when communication is open and clear. These valued residents will be able to speak positively about the property through word of mouth and reviews. This kind of marketing is important as it's based on their personal experience. So we're going to walk through 3 types of communication, and you probably know them already. Written communication, that's everything you write, like texts, emails, and reports. Verbal communication, that's everything you say. And nonverbal communication, that's your body language and your facial expressions. In each section, I'm going to give you 3 areas to focus on. That's it. You don't need a laundry list and 100 tips on grammar lessons. There's enough of that out there already. What I want to share with you is what I know from experience will help you be a better communicator. So up first is written communication. And your 3 takeaways from this section are: be focused, be human, and be brief. So let me touch on each one a little further. Let's start with being brief. We are all short on time and attention spans. To make sure your message cuts through the clutter and that your intent is understood, you should focus on the essentials of what you want your reader to take away from it. Have you ever heard the phrase, "don't bury the lead"? It's a journalism expression, and basically it means you should write the most important thing first, and then each successive paragraph underneath that can flesh out the main idea for those who are interested in reading further. It's the same thing as an elevator pitch, if you've ever heard of that, but in written form. I don't know about you, but I'm getting lots and lots of emails, both from my kids' school and from the school district. And then they start by giving me about 6 paragraphs of lead-in, telling me everything that has gotten them to this point so far. And then the new information that they really need me to know comes about 5, 6, 7 paragraphs deep. I get confused every time I get one of these. I'm sure you've all gotten a message like this as well. If you're writing an email, it means that when you're not bearing your lead and when you're leading with action, it means you let your reader know what to expect up front so they don't get confused along the way like I get with the messages from my school district. So for example, you start with things like, this email outlines 3 competing bids on the project below and why I recommend using supplier number 2. Oh, great. I already know that you're going with number 2. And if I need to know all your reasons and I'm interested in them, I can keep reading. Please review the plan attached and let me know your thoughts by end of day. Here are the answers to your thoughtful questions from our tours. It lets me know right up front the purpose of the message and gives me an idea of what you want me to do or to get out of the message right away. This sets your reader up to take the action you want them to take, thereby greatly increasing your chances of getting the response you need or want. Another element of being focused is using simple language. Helpful writers choose simple words and avoid complex language. While it's true the formality of your message should match the situation and your relationship with the reader, in most instances, choosing simple language will serve you far better than complex language. Why? Because it's more familiar. Familiar language is language that the reader easily recognizes and understands because they use it all the time. One of the most important functions of language is to build a sense of commonality, meaning that you have something in common with your reader. Language, which is foreign and unfamiliar to the reader, tends to emphasize the differences between you, and your message becomes more difficult to understand. By using language that's familiar to your reader, your message is likely to have more impact, and that's what we all want. So here's some examples. Avoid using words like accompany, use go with. Avoid affirmative, use yes. Instead of conceptualize, use think. Instead of utilize, use. Instead of transpired, happened. Instead of facilitate, help. So when possible, swap out for the most simple language possible. Have you ever had to read a message several times just to understand it? We've all been on the receiving end of emails like that, and our impulse is to hit delete. But what if that email includes information you need, or it comes from someone you can't ignore? Many writers fall into the trap of writing in vague and bureaucratic styles because they think it makes them sound more formal or professional, but it confuses and challenges the reader. So if you don't want your readers to hit delete, use a modern written communication style that engages them, that pulls them in with friendly conversational tones. To be effective, let your human voice come through. Imagine getting an email from your payroll department that sounds like this. A prompt response to the inquiry below would be appreciated. It is required to update bank records. But what if you received this instead? Please email me your new direct deposit information by June 14th so I can ensure you receive this month's pay in your new bank account. I know I'd rather get an email from writer B, right? Because in addition to it being more conversational, it's also just generally better because it includes a more specific request and it ties it back to a benefit to me. So I want to be writer B and not writer A. Then it comes down to what's best to use, text or email. I mentioned being brief, so that means use text, right? Well, not necessarily. More and more of us are using text, especially on site in our everyday conversation. But of course, we're using email all the time too. So talking about text definitely has some benefits. For example, texts have higher open and response rate. Emails are open 20% of the time versus 98% for text, meaning who opens the message and looks at it, looks at your message. And then 90% of text messages are open and read within the first 3 seconds. I think that's amazing. Texts have a 45% response rate versus a 6% response rate for email. And that means that once it's opened, your reader either clicks on a link that you've sent or responds back to you. That's the response rate. But email allows you to send more complete thoughts and to answer more in-depth questions. They don't have character limits like text has. And you can add in pictures and HTML design, and your only links are allowed in text. So here's how I recommend dividing up messages as often as possible. Text works best if you're sending specials, confirmations, links, or directions, something like that. Emails work best for detailed information that you need to get across. Maybe you're answering a lot of questions about pet policies and breed restrictions, or you want to send photos, or you're responding to an email. So that leads me into my caveat. When you're responding to a lead, your first response should be sent in the manner that you received the lead whenever possible. So if you received a text, send a text back. If you received it by phone or email, make that your first response. You can move your next communication to the platform that works best. Just let them know that I'll be following up with you by email next. I'm sorry I wasn't able to reach you when I called. Something like that. Now, you know I couldn't lead a session called Why Use 3 Words When an Emoji Will Do without talking about emojis, right? So here you are, you're welcome. So here's the question that I hear sometimes is it okay to use emojis? Well, emojis are meant to be lighthearted and convey emotions efficiently in a way that words sometimes can't. Emojis in a business setting break down barriers in formal communication. They bring conversations down to a personal level. But emojis need to be used wisely and selectively. So wait a minute, I didn't say never use emojis. That's right. So when can you use an emoji? Well, first I want you to consider your audience. Is your audience mostly digital natives? Do you work with student housing, Gen Z, and millennials? Yeah, there's definitely a time and a place then for emojis. Is it someone you know well or personally? Could be, depending on your professional relationship with them. Is it someone you want to respect you in the workplace? This gets into more of a gray area. Without knowing more, I'd probably shy away from no. Is it someone you respect in the workplace and aspire to emulate? Well, do they use emojis? And if so, how do they use emojis? It's tricky, right? Just like most things in communication, there are few rules that can't be broken just because we're human and because society norms change over time. What's taboo today may be acceptable tomorrow. So rather than talking about it in general, I wanted to give you guys some examples. Here are some ways that I see emojis popping up in communication that I think are fine as long as it isn't overdone. So remember, they need to be used judiciously and sparingly. And they have a place in your social media, I think, absolutely fitting in there, and also in your social media responses, in your internal company chats and DM systems, like in Zoom chats, right? We use it all the time with my team. In Craigslist headlines, although I'm putting a little asterisk next to that and I'm saying I'd stick to 2 or 3 at most. It starts to get real irritating and real busy after that. And then remember to make them relevant to your topic. And by the way, as I was researching this and I was looking through my own chats with my team in Zoom chats, I discovered that I do the high 10 a lot. So I guess that's my go-to messaging, to say, congratulations, good job. So I tend to you. So let's stop and take another poll. Kelly, if you could bring that up, that would be great. Being a good speaker, a confident communicator, means looking like you mean what you're talking about and sounding like you mean what you're talking about. So before we move into talking about verbal and nonverbal communication, here's the question. What's more important? How you look, how you sound, or what you say? So we're going to have you choose one, either how you look, which is visual, how you sound, which is vocal, or what you say, verbal. So go ahead and choose that now. We'll keep it open just a second longer. And then Kelly, you can go ahead and close that out. Terrific. Okay, so 26% said how you look, 29% how you sound, so that's pretty close. And then the majority said what you say. Great. Well, let me show you the results because there's actually an answer to this. If I can get that to move, and I did. When you speak, 55% of your message comes from how you look, how you use your hands, how you're standing, your body language. It helps people determine your attitude and the emotions behind your words. 38% is how you sound. Do you sound sure of yourself or timid, or are you calm or scared? Only 7% of your message is conveyed based on the words themselves. So let's start there. Let's talk about verbal communication. The 3 areas here where we're going to talk about are confidence, getting connected, that's both to yourself and to others, and remembering to breathe. Very important, I have found. A confident communicator is someone who's thoughtful with their words, who recognizes the impact of language and has facial expressions that reflect the mood and texture of what's being said. Someone whose voice owns the message. So you look like you mean what you're talking about, and you sound like you mean what you're talking about. To do that, we have to know how we want to come across and be seen by others. For instance, if you're delivering a presentation on a new leasing and marketing plan, what words would you use to describe how you want to see yourself and have others see you? Words, I'm sure, like confident, knowledgeable, or engaging, to name a few. But what if you're in a conversation with a resident and you're talking about a tough situation and delivering a tough message? What words would you use then to convey how you want to see yourself and how you would want that resident to see you? Words perhaps like genuine, concerned, or empathetic. A good speaker, a confident speaker, is also someone who's willing to be vulnerable in front of others. Sometimes it's through a heartwarming story of loss or failure. Other times it's through the sharing of an experience that holds meaning for you. Being vulnerable also means accepting that you don't know everything and you don't have to. If someone asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, make a note of it and then tell them you'll find out. And then do just that. Make sure that you follow up. A good speaker touches you. A good speaker makes you listen. A good speaker can make you act. A good speaker is connected to themselves and connected to those they talk to. All of these qualities come together so the speaker sounds and looks like they know what they're talking about. That's what confidence looks like to your audience, regardless of whether it's an audience of 100 or an audience of 1. I just mentioned being connected, so let's talk about what that means. I asked you before what words you use to describe how you want to see yourself and have others see you when delivering the proposal, right? Like confident, knowledgeable, engaging. But why be mindful of how you want to come across before and during a presentation? It's because it gets you out of your own head, and it's the first step in connecting with others as well. Connecting with others means making it about the person you're talking to, or if it's a group, the people you're talking to. We do that by turning every important communication into a two-way communication. I define meaningful two-way communication very simply as the delivery of one thought at one time. One-way communicators are in their own head. They're thinking about their message, and they're thinking way too fast. If that's you, and I know that sometimes that's me, it means you could be thinking about the next point you want to make to get across, rather than listening to the questions coming from your audience or picking up on their body language from your audience. We've all been there before. And there's a term for that, and it's called racing brain syndrome. So how do you combat racing brain syndrome? Well, first step is think slower. You center yourself. And again, I just touched on it. You deliver one thought at one time, and it keeps you in the present instance. You ask questions. You make it a two-way communication. You gauge if your audience understands the information. You see how they're responding physically. You note the reaction and address it, or note it and address it later if that's more appropriate. But you don't ignore it and barrel through. It will make you more nervous and your audience more on edge and less likely to listen. So if anybody here practices yoga, you're going to love this section because we're going to talk about breathing. And yes, breathing matters both in life and in having greater verbal communication skills. So do you ever stop to recognize that often in stressful situations, especially when your confidence is low, that your breathing goes haywire? In moments of nervousness during meetings, presentations, or difficult conversations with residents, people can lose touch with themselves. If you're nervous, you can make your audience nervous, and you're giving your brain negative feedback about your confidence, which in turn causes you to become more nervous, making you breathe more quickly and shallowly, causing a very uncomfortable cycle. It makes it difficult for us to think or concentrate. And within the context of communicating, we stop breathing when we lose our place, when we forget what we want to say, or when someone asks a tough question. That's why breathing is important when you're listening to a question too. So we're going to do an exercise together to practice breathing deep from your belly. rather than shallow from your chest. So I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment and just follow my voice. Now we're in Zoom. You have nothing to lose. Nobody can see you. All right. So here we go. Get comfortable. Close your eyes. You're going to breathe in and your belly should be expanding out. Breathe out. Belly in, nice and slow. Breathe in, belly out. Breathe out, belly in. You're going to make every breath last 3 to 5 seconds. Breathe in, belly out. Breathe out, belly in. Use your nose because it warms and filters the air. Breathe in, belly out. Breathe out, belly in. Breathing this way helps you relax and think more clearly. Breathe in, belly out. Breathe out, belly in. Breathing this way actually puts pressure on the diaphragm, which in turn activates what's called the vagus nerve, and that produces the relaxation response. Okay, I promised it wouldn't be long, so you can open up your eyes now. I use this breathing technique before every speaking engagement, and it works. At least it does for me. And it's not just the way to breathe to induce relaxation. It's a form of breathing that serves us well all the time, especially those of us who are prone to anxiety. So let's finish this out by talking about 3 elements with body language: your eyes, your face, and your hands. Let's start with your eyes. You use your eyes to show your confidence. You recall I mentioned confidence is a focus area for verbal communication. But if you have to speak in a group, like giving a presentation or speaking at a conference like this, you can feel anything but confident. So how do you do it and sound like you are the authority on your subject? Well, you deliver one thought to one face at one time. When you're looking at your audience, find a face in the group and make eye contact. Deliver your thought completely. Hold your gaze to ensure the thought was caught. Move to another face to deliver another thought. Keep your eye contact a moment longer when you're delivering a really powerful thought. So why does this work? Well, talking to one person helps calm you. It's for you. This creates that dynamic and makes you feel more relaxed and more conversational. You're just speaking to one person with other people listening in. If you're uncomfortable making eye contact, then I would urge you to practice it in your everyday conversation. You do get better at it the more often you do it. Your facial expressions need to match your message as well. They reflect the mood and the tone in your eyes. Things like, I've got good news to share, or I've got bad news to share. Remember, the eyes set the pace for the rest of your face. So here's a real world example using Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook, and Mark Zuckerberg, its founder. These photos say, I've got good news to deliver. They're speaking to a group of investors. They're talking about how well the company's doing. Eyebrows are up. There's smiles going on their faces. They look happy, right? You can tell instantly they're talking about something happy. Well, and then compare them to these. These say, I've got bad news to deliver. These photos are taken from around the time Mark was called before the Senate to discuss lapses in privacy and selling user data. Remember, the eyes set the pace for the rest of the face. We're all encountering people these days with face masks, right? So how do you read their expressions and how can they read yours? So I want to share a resource that I found in putting all of this together today. It's from a website called Science of People, and it's a blog post called How to Read Faces Even When Everyone is Wearing a Mask by Vanessa Van Edwards. I think it was fascinating and really informative. I'd recommend it to you, and I've included the link in the resources section for this session online, and you'll also be able to find a copy of the PowerPoint that we're going through today in there as well, and those are available for you right now. When it comes to body language, I'm going to focus on your hands today because there's a lot of ground to cover. Your body takes up a lot of space, but let's just focus on your hands. Talking with your hands comes naturally to us and offers us so many benefits. First of all, the hands help us think. What is that word I was trying? Rooster. That is a real story, by the way. I couldn't think of the word rooster in a conversation once. I'm like, it's a male chicken. What do you call a male rooster? So a 2016 study found the best thinkers use their heads and their hands. Using your hands can make you more interesting to look at. And after all, 55% of the way people determine your attitudes and emotions is through the visual, through your body language. Talking with your hands makes your voice more interesting. The more you use your hands, the stronger your voice, the more inflection in your voice. The more inflection in your voice, the easier it is for people to hear you and your message. And this is especially important for those who tend to speak softly or speak in monotone. Talking with your hands makes you look like a leader. You use your hands if you use your hands in a firm and purposeful manner as if to convey, I meant to say that. And unless you intended, try not to clench your fists because that can make us look nervous, angry, or upset. One more benefit to using our hands when we talk is it can help us stay calm. When we get nervous, our bodies tend to constrict. If we're nervous and standing with our fists at our side while we're speaking, all our anxiety is going through our body without any escape. Using our hands when we're talking helps us get rid of our anxiety. So what's your best pose? Well, you keep your fingers open and slightly spread with a slight curl and use them in a deliberate manner that gives emphasis to what you say as you say it. So on your screen, you see a photo. And what I'm showing is a photo of Ramona Smith. She's the 2018 Toastmasters World Champion of Public Speaking. And she's demonstrating what I'm talking about. Sometimes when you're delivering a message and you want to convey a warmer side, or when you're asking people to do something, the best gesture is this one that she's showing, palms up in front of you. It's a primal gesture that says, no rocks, no knives, I come in peace. Now you could be wondering, is there such a thing as using too many hand gestures? Yes, if the hand movement doesn't make any sense, meaning it doesn't match what you're saying as you're saying it, or if it's overly repetitive. Sometimes it can give you more anxiety, and that means it can give your audience anxiety too. But there's 2 points I want to make regarding hand gestures. Do you have to have hand gestures to go with every word out of your mouth? No, but I want you to recognize that your energy level drops as soon as your hands fall to your side or get shoved into your pockets. Notice your hand gestures in everyday interactions and practice those while you're speaking in front of a group or on a leasing tour. I mentioned earlier, I don't know if I could speak to a group without using my hands. That would seem very stiff and stifling to me. So that clearly is my place of comfort when I'm speaking to everybody. So let's do our last poll. I want you to think today, which communication style are you most comfortable with today? Which one's your strength? Written communication, verbal communication, or nonverbal communication? I think it's important for all of us to identify where our strength is so that we can lead with that. So let's go ahead and close that one out and see what everybody said. Oh, well, we're tied just about, but we're slightly more leading with written communicators at 47%, 45% with verbal communicators, and 8% with nonverbal communicators. I think that's really interesting. So let's move into our final section of the day, of the morning, I should say. It's not even the day. Let's talk about some pitfalls and some things to avoid in communicating. So the ability to communicate effectively and confidently has a dramatic effect on our ability to advance our careers. Yet many of us fall into the trap of using weak language that sabotages our efforts to present ourselves with authority and confidence. This is true for all of us, men and women alike, but some would argue it's especially true for women. There have been many articles over the last few years that take the opinion that women undermine their credibility time and time again by using minimizing language. Others disagree and feel that there's a time and place for it. So I want to give you both sides of the argument. I would say watch your use of words like just and only. Those are minimizers. I'm convinced that if we take this one small step and really focus on how we use the word just and eliminate it as much as possible from our communication, we would see a huge difference in the way we are perceived in the workplace. I mean that for everyone, again, men and women alike. I'm amazed at how much I used this word unnecessarily and unconsciously. I'm just checking in to see, or I just want you to know, or I just called because. Sometimes, though, we may want to use just or only as a hedge. What's a hedge? We use hedges to soften what we say or what we write. Hedges are an important part of polite conversation. They make what we say less direct, less confrontational. If you work on site, think about a prospective resident calling to find out how much your 1-bedrooms are. You may answer with, I'm happy to give you that, but may I ask you just a few questions so I can quote the apartments that are available in your time frame. In that instance, you're using just as a hedge to let them know that you need something from them first, but it won't be too time consuming. Bottom line is, know when you're using it as a hedge and when you're using it because you aren't confident in your request. My new awareness of the impact of the word just has now forced me to carefully choose my words in order to reflect my confidence. I've really cut it out of a lot of my written conversations and using it verbally, and I think it's made a big difference. So cliches and legalese go along with using simple language, but it's more specific. Cliches could be misunderstood. Maybe it's unfamiliar to your reader, your audience, or they're not native English speakers, so they don't know what you're talking about. And legalese, it can sound cold and uncaring. Plus, readers tend to skip over them because they come across as stuffy. That's a critical error to make when communicating with your residents, especially. So instead of saying, I want you to push the envelope with your proposal, try, I'd like you to bring me new ideas, something we haven't tried before. Instead of at your earliest convenience, try, if you could provide your feedback by tomorrow, that would be helpful. But speaking of residents and real life examples, I was working with a property manager who wanted a form to document resident complaints, something she could give out to the residents. Her intentions were great. She wanted to show them that we were taking their concerns seriously, but we worked together and we changed it to an email template, and then we made the tone much more conversational. So instead of what she originally wrote, thank you for your recent correspondence regarding your experience on the property. We promptly investigated your allegations and have made the following determinations. That sounded like attorneys wrote it. And that sets somebody up in their mindset to think, whoa, are you writing this because there's going to be potential issues down the road? It just sounds overly formal and sort of sets the wrong tone for it. Instead, what we wrote was, thank you for your email regarding the issues you raised. We have looked into this and would like to share an update with you. Much more to the point, conversational and lacking that legalese. Communication is also a two-way street, at least good communication is. It's how we connect with each other. And to be a good communicator, you have to be a good listener. Have you ever heard the saying, seek first to understand, then to be understood? It is true. Whether it's a difficult face-to-face conversation or an email chain, ask yourself if during the course of the conversation, you're reacting or responding. What's the difference? Responding, while technically a reaction, takes into consideration the desired outcome of the interaction. How do you want your conversation exchange to end? What do you want to come from it? A reaction may result in either a positive or negative outcome, whereas a response is designed to produce a positive or negative outcome. Reacting is emotional. Responding is emotional intelligence. You are in control of your emotions and you don't let them drive your message. How do you respond though, rather than react? Well, you need to take a moment to gather your thoughts or ask more questions to confirm you understand the request or the intent of the message that you received. Have you ever heard the phrase, get curious, not furious? I learned this a few years ago and I love it. It means instead of getting mad, ask more questions first about what the other person really means and what they're trying to say. The answer could drastically change what you do or what you say next. And you know I can't end without giving one pitch for grammar and spelling, even though I wasn't going to give you a laundry list. But that doesn't mean you have to be an English major, okay? I want to give you two free resources, White Smoke or Grammarly. Now, we use Grammarly at Security Properties Residential. I have it installed. My team has it installed. Our whole company has it installed. It is free. They also have paid versions, the same with both of these. But you can install them on your computer if your IT department blesses it. And and it will read your emails, it will read your memos, it will give you grammar and spelling suggestions. It will make you a much better writer, and it will make you more aware of where you have common issues, and then over time you'll start catching them yourself. So those are my free plugs for you on grammar and spelling. So to wrap up, I want to say, great communicators are curious about themselves and the people they engage with. They understand what they want to accomplish and how they want to be perceived. They're curious about the people they are communicating with. They focus on understanding what people say and what they mean. They make sure their written messages sound like they were written by a person, not a computer. They pay attention to nonverbal communication and are aware of their own body language. They know what they're talking about, or at least they look and sound like they do because they're poised and collected. Whichever area you felt was your area for growth, I know that by focusing on the areas I shared with you today, you can be a more powerful communicator. You can sell your boss on that promotion or your team on that project that will cause them to work overtime. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope you found value in it. I know that I did. So now I will turn it back over to Kelly. Kelly, did we have any questions that came through the chat today?
We do have a question from Rhonda. She says, I have a leasing consultant who constantly uses the you know what I'm trying to say, exclamation point throughout her emails. I've talked with her about it many times, but she continues. Any suggestions?
Bless your heart, because I know exactly what you mean, because I also have to watch myself. I get excited and I want to, I've had to make a rule with myself that I'm doing it in DMs, but I'm reading, rereading, and then reading again. So here's a suggestion. I've done this with team members of my own team. They'll send me something, and number one, I make it a formal goal, right? So it's something that's formalized either in their annual goals or if we're setting quarterly goals. And I'm right up front about it. I don't believe in being passive aggressive with any of this. So I let them know right up front, here's what we're going to work on, because I think this is an area of growth for you. And we're going to work on this instance. I would say we're going to work on grammar and spelling and punctuation and your use of exclamation points, and say, I'm letting you know this up front because I want you to be aware of it. And then when they send you messages, critique them, fix it, send it back. Make sure they're starting to see it. I know that you've said that you guys have talked about it, and that is an excellent first step, but sometimes they need to see it themselves in their own writing before it actually connects for them, so that they can be aware of it and then start getting ahead of it. That's part of going back to Grammarly. That's part of what Grammarly has done for me. It's helped me be aware of, for example, where I should be putting in spaces where I wasn't. I would write 2 p.m. with the 2 and no space with the p.m. I hadn't really thought about it, and now it catches it, and now I'm putting that in and correcting it myself. But they need, your leasing consultant needs to see it, and that's how I would do it, in a kind way with empathy, but being right up front about it to show that to them. And you would correct it and perhaps highlight the ones that you would have them take out and then send it back to them. But I think if you set it up in a way that's meant to help them in their personal growth, they'll understand where that's coming from. And I think it can be a positive experience. And by the way, I would add Grammarly or White Smoke. That will help too.
Thank you, Laurel. Would you say there's a maximum amount that you would want, like 1 per paragraph or something like that?
Yeah, so, again, I tend to shy away from hard and fast rules. I think 1 per paragraph is certainly a safe amount, that if we needed to do it around that, 1 per paragraph would feel very comfortable to me. And frankly, I do try to limit mine to 1 per paragraph. However, what if you are sharing the news that as a team, you have achieved a big goal? Maybe you're a lease up, right? And you got to stability 4 months ahead of schedule. Well, I'm going to say go ahead and put two exclamation points, 1 at the beginning of your paragraph and 1 at the end of your paragraph. So again, depending on the context, it's okay to break the rule, but generally speaking, I would say limit it to 1, because otherwise you're just a little too enthusiastic about the whole thing. general rule.
Thank you. We have another question from Cassandra Mitchell. Is it appropriate to use Google Translate and put things in writing when there is a language barrier?
Well, I know a lot of teams that use Google Translate. I think that it can be a terrific benefit to us as an industry. It's really helped break down some of those barriers. I know I use it when I travel. If I'm going to a foreign country and I don't speak the language at all, or I don't speak it well. And I know that there's many websites out there now that automatically have Google Translate built into the website, where down at the bottom often there's a little translate button. So Google Translate is what's being used to translate your website. So I would say yes, if you don't have someone who speaks that language there on site, that's a perfectly fine way to do it. It is not perfect though. Google Translate with some languages are off base. So here in Washington, we have many people that are from Russia, from Belarus, from the Ukraine, and it's not great with those languages, or at least that's the feedback that I've gotten from teams in the past. So there could be some misunderstandings there, know that, but it's better than not being able to communicate. So I would say with that caveat.
Fantastic. Well, we're all out of time. Thank you, Laurel, for a wonderful presentation. I have taken some notes myself, and we'll take that back to my team. And we're going to move on to the next session. Thanks again for sharing your expertise, and we look forward to seeing you all in the next couple of sessions throughout the day.
Thank you all. It was my pleasure.